Hello, brothers and sisters. I know it's been a while since I've talked to you, but as I've said in previous videos, I'm really not sure what to say to you except just to spend a little time with you. Maybe tell you some of the things that have been on my mind lately, just so we can share a little fellowship time because, guys, anymore, I. I don't really know what to tell you. I'm not going to be one of these that are on some of these so-called watchman channels saying it's going to happen today, it's going to happen this week, it's going to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. Well, I'm not going to start down that rabbit trail. You all know my thoughts on these watchman channels, and you just have to decide for yourself what's good for your spirit and what's not. I don't know how people can live in a constant state of disappointment and not have it affect them. Anyway, I had a thought about something and I just want to run it by you guys. I'd really like to know what you think about it and just be honest, because this is just something that's just come to me here in the last few days that I never really considered before. But anyway, I'm just gonna tell you what's going on in my mind, and then you guys can decide what you think about it. You know how we're all wondering why in the world are we still here, right? I mean, why do we have to be here to witness all this? Well, I had a thought. What if what's going on now, doesn't have to do with the world or with the church? What if what's going on now, the things that are going on in the world that are setting up for the beast system, what if it's all because of something God's trying to do with the Jews? Not having to do with more people being saved, although that would be a benefit of not coming just yet. More people would get to come into the kingdom. But I don't believe that's the reason, because God set the time for the rapture. So he's the one that's going to be cutting people off in the future that are still here after the rapture. So there would always be somebody, if given enough time, down the road would turn to the Lord, like somebody had a seed planted, and if the Lord didn't come with the rapture for 20 more years, this person might finally have come to the Lord. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I'm just saying if the Lord didn't choose the time he chose for the rapture, there would have been more people come to the Lord beyond that time. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody would have come to the Lord a week after the rapture, when God raptures people, that's not going to happen. So God cut that ability to be raptured and be a part of the church off at the rapture. But the Jews, we know the Jews, except for the Messianic Jews, now they're going to go with us in the rapture, but there's not that many of them. I imagine there's more of them now than there ever has been before. But there's not that many of them, relatively speaking. I wouldn't think more than a few 100,000 at the most Jews are Messianic. The rest of them are either secular or they're following Judaism. So we know that they're going to be here during the tribulation. In fact, we know that the reason for the tribulation is when God finally turns his attention back to Israel to save the remnant of his people, his chosen people, from among the Jews, which, if we're understanding scripture right, will be about 1/3 of the Jews will end up being saved. But the reason I had these kind of thoughts is because I look around now and what's happening in the world. The whole world has turned its attention to Israel. The whole world has turned on Israel. And I'm talking the whole world. There's only a handful of countries that are still trying to back Israel and what they're doing, and all the rest of the nearly 200 countries on the earth are coming out against the Jews just for the sake of them being Jews, and they're promoting what Hamas did as having some kind of a legitimate reason for what they did to Israel. So God is showing. I knew there was a lot of anti-Semitism in the world. All you got to do is read comment sections to know that. But as much of it as I knew there was, I never realized that the whole world, the whole globe felt that way about Israel, because Israel doesn't have that much contact with most of the third world countries. So why would they hate the Jews except that because they're Jews? So I think one of the reasons why maybe we're still here and this is still preparation time is so that Israel comes to the realization as they look around themselves right now that the whole world is turning against them. And you can mark my words, in the next little bit of time, the United States and Britain, which is like two of the only countries left that are even halfway supporting Israel, they're going to turn their back because of political pressure and upcoming elections and all these protests that are going on. We had, I think it was like 30,000 people march on the White House saying they demanded a ceasefire right now. So with elections coming up and political power in the balance, this administration will turn its back on Israel. This administration really doesn't give a crap about Israel now, but they're having to pretend like they do. So I'm thinking maybe this is so that the Jews will realize for the first time just how hated and how outnumbered and how unforgiving and unrealistic this world is as far as their hatred for Jews just for the sake of them hating a Jew. They're going to look around now, and it's not hidden anywhere. You can't watch any kind of a news channel except for a few Christian ones where they're just not beating the heck out of the Jews right now over Gaza Strip. So I think God is using this time to show Israel that they have no friends in this world, that they're not going to be able to depend on America to have their back anymore. And I think with all the trouble going on between Netanyahu and Biden right now, not agreeing on anything, I think that the government in Israel is finally realizing that America is not a real true ally of theirs. America only wants Israel to prosper and exist so long as America can control Israel. And I think this time, with this thing that's happening right now, this war going on, Israel finally had enough and said, we're not going to care what the rest of the world says. We're going to do what we need to do, even if the world hates us even more for doing it, because we don't have a choice in the matter. If we don't finish this job, it'll be right back to the same thing 5 years from now, with Hamas reconstituted and coming after them again. And Israel has finally said, nope, it's enough. This time Hamas is going to be taken out. And the world hates them for sticking to their guns. So I'm thinking that maybe one of the reasons why the rapture hasn't happened yet is because we're in a transition period. God's starting to change his attention from the world back to Israel, which is what the whole last 7 years is about, the redemption of the Jews. And we're currently in some kind of a transition period where God's winding down his dealings with the Gentile world and starting to refocus on the Jewish issues and the Jewish problems. It's because they wanted Israel to see how badly the whole world turned against them, and that the only friends that they have anywhere in this world now are Christians that love Israel. That's their only ally, and they realize that we are weak. We don't have any power to tell our governments what to do. So they're ignoring the Christians that want to help Israel. So I think this is all going for Israel's sake. They're realizing they have no true allies anywhere in the world, that they can't depend on America anymore to have their back. They just need to have their eyes opened up to the reality of what's going on. And I think that's why Israel is fighting for all they're worth right now. And then we have the verse that says that blindness is in part until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Well, I've always thought of that fullness of the Gentiles coming in as being the Christians that are going to come into the church coming in. But what if that's not what it means, or what if that's not only what it means? What if fullness of the Gentiles means when a Gentile is anybody that's not a Jew? So, in other words, the whole world except for the Jews are Gentiles. So, when it says the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, maybe that means when the power and the people in authority and the people with all the numbers and the weapons and the hatred come against Israel and make their stand against Israel just as a nation and Jews as a people. So what if when it says that they're blind in part until the fullness of the Gentiles comes in, what if that means that Israel was also blind to how desperate and dire their situation was until they were shown this with their own eyes, until the world actually did turn their back on them and Israel could plainly see, because it says blindness in part until the fullness of the Gentiles. What if that means that they're not as blind as they were? Now they're still blind to Jesus, but what if that doesn't just mean that? What if that does mean that the blindness of the Jews is finally being lifted, the scales are finally being lifted off their eyes, and they're seeing with their own eyes in the real world how bad a situation they're in, and they're not blind to it anymore, because the fullness of the Gentiles was the gathering of all Gentiles against Jews. So I think maybe it might not just that verse that the blindness is in part until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Maybe that doesn't mean that the Jews will be blind until all of the people that are going to be Christians come in. Maybe that means that the Jews have been blinded to how bad their situation truly was until all of the Gentile nations in the world all gathered against her, and her eyes were finally opened. She wasn't blind to it anymore. You know, this is going to be a hard video to understand. I'm not saying it right. I think that's one of the reasons why I've hesitated to come back on here, is because I know in my mind what I'm thinking, but for whatever reason I'm not explaining it very good. To go back to my original thought, I'm thinking maybe the reason we're still here is because the Jews had to get their sight back and realize what was going on against them as a nation. But wouldn't it make sense for at the very end here for God to work towards separating out the Jews and the Christians from the rest of the world? And that's exactly what all this is doing. Because like I said, the only people in this world that are true allies of Israel are Christians. The Christians that know that they are to love and to honor God. They're the only allies that Israel has left in this whole world. And God has now, by these actions of what's going on in Israel, He has effectively separated Christians and Jews from the whole rest of the world and made them realize that they were the only decency left in this dying and dark world. Because remember, at the end of the tribulation period, there's going to be uh, a third of the Jews, which is still less than 10 million, probably pretty far less than 10 million Jews, are all that's going to end up being saved out of Israel. Those are the ones that will be protected in the wilderness for the last 3.5 years. But at the end of the whole thing, that remnant of the Jews will be following their Messiah, the true Messiah, Jesus. And so who's going to be left for God to send into the millennium? Whatever Christians might survive the tribulation while God's working with Israel, or the Jews that will come into the kingdom at the end, because there's not going to be all that many that make it into the kingdom. A few million at the most, I would think. So anyway, if any of you have any thoughts about what I just said, if you could understand what I was trying to say, I'd really appreciate some feedback in the comment section. You know, if you think I'm crazy, that's okay, but don't be mean in the comments. Just saying, no, I don't think that that's what it is, or whatever, and then maybe give your reason why you don't think it's that way. Or if you just think, yeah, that's a possibility, but I don't know, or whatever the case may be. Because this is something that's been going around and around in my mind for the last 3 or 4 days. And like I say, I'd really appreciate it if you all would give me some feedback on it, if you could understand what I was trying to say. Because I, for the life of me, like you guys, cannot figure out why we still have to be here. We all know God does not need us for anything. God could pull this thing off in the next split second without any help from us. So I don't know why we are being left here to bear witness to this. I'm still not real sure why we are. I just had this thought about the Jews and stuff. Maybe as soon as God, now that He's opened the Jews' eyes to the reality of how hated they truly are in this world, maybe that'll move things forward, because God will have accomplished bringing His nation out of their blindness. So maybe that's all we were here for, just for there to be time for this crooked and disgusting world to all come together as one voice and in unity against the tiny, teeny, itty bitty little nation of Israel. And it's spiritual war. They couldn't care less about that little strip of land. There isn't nothing there to worry about. This is a spiritual war. This is between good and evil, between God and Satan. It's between the world that we live in and the spiritual world. We're fighting people, but we're not fighting flesh and blood, because the people we're fighting that are, for all intents and purposes, in control of the earth now, they're controlled by demons or Satan or just their own pure wickedness and hatred of God. I don't know. But it's all becoming, I mean, the lines are being drawn between the camp between good and evil and between God and Satan in a way that it never has been before. Like I said, I've looked at this world for a long time and known they've been anti-Semitic, but I did not know that it was this widespread and this deeply felt. We have so many protests here in America now that are pro-Hamas. They're okay with what Hamas did on October the 7th. And I'm not going to go into that here because it just breaks my heart and it grosses me out to even think about it. I've been very selective in what video I've watched, because one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older is whatever goes into your mind is in there until they put you in the grave or the rapture one. The things that you allow yourself to into your mind through your eyes or ears or reading the written word, whatever you put in your brain is there for good. It may not be a part of your consciousness, but it's going to influence you as a whole. There is one thing I can set your mind at ease about, maybe. You know, all the talk now. When I was growing up, when we talked about nuclear weapons, I mean, it was dreaded. You didn't talk about stuff like that out in public. It wasn't a topic of conversation. We were scared for it. I'm old enough that I lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs and all that kind of crap. I remember in school getting under your desk and covering your head with your hands behind your head because a nuke might fall. It was a drill we did, like fire drills. I don't even know if they do fire drills anymore, but when I was growing up, they did. But we also did nuclear attack drills. And we were taught how to get up under our desks and crap like that, which, looking back at it, is so completely ridiculous. But that, no, nevertheless, that's what was going on at the time when I was a little kid. But now they talk about nuclear war every other sentence. Somebody's threatening somebody with getting nuked. Well, you better don't do that or I'll drop a big old nuke on your head. Well, you better don't do that because my nuke is twice as big as yours is and I'll drop mine on your head. And it's just back and forth. Every day somebody threatening to nuke somebody. And everybody talking every day about World War III getting ready to start. Well, all you have to do is just use common sense and look what the Bible says happens during the 7 years of tribulation. Now, without going into any great detail, those of you that know about the book of Revelation know there's all kinds of nasty stuff that's going to happen during them 7 years. Plagues and famines and earthquakes and fire falling from the heavens and the pit opening up and beasties coming up after you and all kinds of stuff going to happen in the tribulation. Well, think about it just for half a second. If we're close to having an all-out global nuclear war that would annihilate the world, then how would we have 7 years of tribulation? How would all of those things in tribulation come to pass without a world for them to pass in? Because if that happened the way people are talking, this world wouldn't be nothing but a big old cinder block with polluted atmosphere and Lord knows what else, poisoned water and everything else from the nuclear fallout. So I think there probably will be a fairly widespread nuclear exchange, but it's not going to happen until the very end of the 7 year tribulation period after all of the things prophesied in the book of Revelation have happened, while there was still a world for them to happen in. Because of Bible verses, it's in Zechariah, I think 14, that talks about their tongues melting in their mouth and their eyes melting in their sockets and dying while they're still standing up and things like that. Now that sounds exactly like what happens in a nuclear blast. You just incinerate it right there while you're still standing on your feet. That sounds a whole lot like nuclear stuff to me, and that's in the Bible. So I believe there probably will be a fairly widespread nuclear exchange right at the end of the 7 years. But we will have been gone from this world for 7 years at that point. This global nuclear war is not ever going to happen while we're here. And it's not going to happen for at least 7 years after we're gone. Because there has to be time for the book of Revelation to be fulfilled. And you're not going to fulfill all of them things that's in the book of Revelation that's going to happen if there's no world left for it to happen in. So maybe that'll set your mind at ease a little bit about that there. As to how long this war that we're in now is going to go on, I couldn't tell you. What the end result of this war is going to be, I couldn't tell you. And by the way, neither can any of these watch people. There's a bunch of them that thinks that this is a Psalm 83 war, which I don't even believe there is such a thing. But even if there is, what we're in right now is not being carried out by the countries that's listed in Psalm 83. So it's not the Psalm 83 war. It's sure not the Gog and Magog war. And so I think this war, whatever the end result of it is still going to be the beginning of the end, because this is a big deal what's going on right now, just in terms of the world, uh, you know, picking sides and choosing a terrorist group over the Jews. It could be that Israel sticks to its guns and pretty much demolishes the Gaza Strip and takes Hamas out for all intents and purposes, and then takes control of the country. That's that's a pretty sure bet right there, at least as far as the part where Hamas and Israel are fighting, just Hamas in the Gaza Strip. At least that part of this war, I think Israel is going to accomplish exactly what they intend to accomplish and take out Hamas's government and take out Hamas's military. Now, there may be little groups of them here and there, a dozen or so, that finally survive all of this, but they're not going to be able to reconstitute what they had before, because Israel is determined they're going to take out their entire tunnel system before this is over with. And without that tunnel system, Hamas doesn't have an army. So I think that the result of the Hamas-Israel war will be a victory for Israel. They will take control of the entire Gaza Strip. They will leave troops in there and they will police the Gaza Strip and basically run the Gaza Strip until they can figure out what kind of a government they can help get set up in there that won't turn its back on Israel that won't turn its back on Israel and start trying to be their enemies again. Because Israel, after all this, Israel won't put up with that. If they have to set up a puppet government in Gaza, then that's what they'll do. They might as well. The United States has puppet governments all over the world. And one of the main reasons that Biden and Netanyahu aren't really getting along is because for the first time, Netanyahu is standing up for himself and he's not letting America bully him. At least not yet, and I don't really see him allowing him to at all. Which is another reason why America in the not too distant future is going to turn our back on Israel too. That's not to say the American people would, because Israel's still very high favorability in the polls in this country. But this government is about as anti-Semitic as you can get. So, but in other words, Israel's going to take control of the Gaza, and they're going to make sure they don't get attacked from Gaza ever again, whatever they have to do. Now, as far as the other countries are concerned, like Hezbollah up in Lebanon to the north, or Syria on the north, or Yemen in the south, or Iran in the east, or the West Bank for that matter, I don't know if Israel is going to try and use what's going on now in Hamas while all the turmoil is going on to do a first strike on Hezbollah while they've already got their army geared up and ready to go, and just decide they're going to take on another enemy and try their best to wipe Hezbollah out while they're at it, because they can do that. Israel can do that, but I think for it to be a success, I think for it to be a good success for Israel, they would have to do a first strike. In other words, they'd have to catch Hezbollah with their pants down and take half of them out before they even knew what was going on. But I think Israel might do that. I know they're capable of doing that. No matter what you hear, all these people, well, they got 150,000 rockets aimed at Israel. Well, maybe they do. But you can guarantee that Israel knows where a bunch of them rockets are located that they can drop huge bombs on and just take out all them rockets. Israel is not stupid. They know where they hide their rocket shipments and all that stuff. So that's why I say Israel should, if they're going to do it, they should do a first strike on Hezbollah and target all of their rocket and ammunition dumps and take out just as much of their firepower as they can before the thing starts. And that's what Israel would do. They would take out all the strategic targets first. Then they'd start working on the tactical targets. But they could take out a good portion of the manpower and a good portion of the armory and the offensive that Hezbollah has before Hezbollah could ever use it against Israel. So that's just a thought. If Israel decides to go ahead while they're in the position they're in and in the state of readiness that they're already in, dealing with Hamas, and there is a low, uh, I don't know what to call it, a low grade war, if there is such a thing, on the northern border now between Hezbollah and Israel. There's rockets and stuff firing back and forth just about every day up on the northern border up by Lebanon coming into Israel from Hezbollah. So there is a low scale war happening there already. So it would make sense to me that Israel's going to figure they've already got the whole world mad at them, and it's not going to get any better in the future. So they may very well figure this is the only chance we're ever going to have if we're going to take out Hezbollah, which is a huge, huge deal. It would that would be a major, almost deadly blow to Iran. And I'm kind of wondering if Israel might not decide this is the time because they know they're going to have to hit Iran, actually hit Iran, the country, at some point because of the nuclear threat. So maybe instead of going a first strike on Hezbollah, maybe they'll go after the head of the snake and take out Iran as best they're able to. They can do major damage in Iran too. So there's too many variables for anybody to know, and anybody that tells you they do know what's going to happen don't have a clue because they don't know. They may talk like they know and try and sound like they know, and like some of them are fond of saying, I can guarantee you 1,000% that it's going to be this here way. No, they can't. They're talking. Well, I ain't gonna. I'll just let that drop. But you know what they're talking out of, don't you? They don't know a bit more than me or you, either one does. They watch tabloids to begin with. I mean, they go to these other sites to get their news about what's going on in the world or what's going on in Israel. They go to all these other sites to see what they're saying, and then they use those for news sources when all of the sites they're going to are not news sources, they're propaganda mills. They put out a bunch of crap, and then these watch people grab onto that crap, and just because it was on RT, or just because it was on Hal Turner, or just because it was on War News 24/7, it must be right and it's accurate. And the fact is, these watch people are never right. So I don't know why anybody puts any credence in anything they say. They do not know a bit more than you and I know. They think they do, but they don't. So is there any of you that can tell me what's going to happen next and guarantee it 1,000%? Do you know which way this war is going to work out with Israel? Are they going to go after Hezbollah after they get done with Hamas? Are they going to go after Iran when they get done with Hamas? Are they going to go against Iran and Hezbollah while they got the chance? That nobody know. And don't let them tell you they do. They're talking like they think this war we're in right now is going to build up to the Gog and Magog war, that it's just all going to run together. First, this little part here, they're saying this is the beginnings of Psalm 83, and then Psalm 83 is going to lead to Gog and Magog. Then Gog and Magog is going to lead to all the crap happening in Israel. And we have to be gone. This is not all one big war. You can't you can't take you can't take different parts of the Bible and just shove them together because you want to or because it makes sense to you. I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it says that a Psalm 83 war even exists, but if it does, I don't see anywhere where it says that happens right before Gog and Magog. You know, these people are just taking bits and pieces here and there, sticking it all together and come up with some kind of a idea in their head that what's happening right now is going to lead to the Gog and Magog war. Now, I'm here to tell you, I don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it maybe it will lead to the Gog-Magog war before it's over. But it doesn't have to. It could just be that the other countries, Hezbollah and Iran, back down, and Israel decides now's not the right time to go after them just yet, because they're still having to deal with running the Gaza Strip and all that crap. So Israel may say this Hamas war is as far as we want it to go this time around, and this war be ended, and Israel in control of Gaza. The whole world still be mad at Israel, but that may be as far as Israel wants to take it. That is, if Israel has a say in it. If they're the ones that decide whether to go and escalate it to get other countries and other militia groups involved in it or not. And to be honest with you, it's been 6 weeks now. Iran hadn't done nothing. Hezbollah hadn't done anything major, just little spurts here and there. The only other people besides Hamas that's doing much of anything are a few Houthis down in Yemen, and all they're doing is firing a few missiles, and they all getting intercepted on the way to Israel. So they're not a legitimate threat. Nobody can tell you if this war goes from a war with Hamas to a war with Hezbollah to a war with Iran. Nobody can tell you that. They got their ideas about it, but they don't know. It could very well be, as much as it's within Israel's power, that this Hamas part is the only part that actually comes to a full-out war. And that would mean that there would be at least a temporary peace in Israel again, right? So then something else would have to happen down the road to trigger Hezbollah or the West Bank or Iran to do something, because Hamas won't be there no more, or the Islamic Jihad won't be there anymore. So it's just way too many variables for people to tell you they know what they're talking about, because they don't, because it's not up to them. And as long as they're using tabloid websites like the ones I mentioned, and just assuming that they're accurate and they're newsworthy when they're not, they're just feeding you secondhand crap and trying to put their own spin on it. And some of them are just out to make money, or some of them are just out because they want to feel important, and it makes them feel important if they have a channel that people come to and listen to them talk on it. So as far as I'm concerned, a lot of these Watchmen channels are nothing but tabloids. It's just, like when you're going out of the grocery store and you see the little National Enquirer there at the checkout line. Elvis Presley found alive in Utah, or 8-foot aliens set down at the White House. Them kind of stories. That's what these Watchmen channels, a lot of them are. Now, some of them make a legitimate effort to just do the news and try and think out loud about what's going on. But a lot of them are just so far removed from reality. Uh, I don't know. I'm not, like I say, I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail, because I have especially one very dear sister to me, that says she gets a lot out of the Watchmen channels. I don't know how she does, but they work for her. So if it's working for you, go ahead. I'm just saying, just don't bet the farm on the things you hear on the Watchmen channels, because a good portion of them don't have a clue what they're talking about, and they're misinterpreting scriptures. So be careful who you listen to, and that includes me. Of course, you don't have to put up with me too much these days, because I'm just being a hermit, I reckon. But I thought I'd run a couple things past you and just visit with you for a little bit, see how you guys are doing. If you're hanging in there okay, and you know. Oh, before this video ends, I got some prayer requests I want to give you. Our sister Lena, you all might remember her. That's Caroline's friend. They live in France. And Lena's the one that had, I think it's thyroid cancer, and they really messed her up bad when they gave her a radiotherapy treatment. They burned out more than part of the cancer. They screwed up her bone marrow. Her bone marrow is not producing blood anymore, and she's constantly having to go in the hospital to get a blood transfusion. So she's not doing well at all. Caroline said she had like what looked like bruises all over her body now, including on her face. So she's in really bad shape. So I'd appreciate it if you all would keep Lena in your prayers. And Caroline too. They've been friends for over 20 years, and basically Lena's the only real friend Caroline has in her whole part of the world. So this has been awful hard on Caroline too. So keep both of them in your prayers. And then please keep Marilyn in your prayers. She's the one that's Carrie's lifelong friend. They've been friends for over 50 years, since they were little girls. So, and Marilyn, she has thyroid cancer, and last I heard they were giving her 3 to 6 months yet, and that's about it. Or they said, or sooner, if the cancer progresses faster than they think it is. So she's not doing too well either. She's handling it fairly well as far as her attitude is concerned, from what Carrie tells me. They speak on the phone every day. That she says things like she's ready to go home and she's tired of this world and things like that. So I suppose as good a attitude as you can have when you're the one that has the terminal diagnosis, she seems to be doing pretty good so far. But there again, she's not been given very much time yet. And what with her and Carrie being such longtime friends, please pray for Carrie, because this is going to really tear her up bad. They are so close, and I've come to know Marilyn in the last 3 years or so, and I've come to love her. She's a sweet little woman. She's had such a rough life. Heaven is probably going to be such a welcoming relief for her once she gets there. But just pray for peace and strength for her and for Carrie, for me, for Caroline, and for Lena, and all of the others who may be in the same situation. It's just a very sad world now, guys. It really is. Oh, and I'm not going to go into any details about it because I didn't ask if I could, but just a general prayer. I don't know if you all remember me mentioning Tim and Deb. They're a married couple. They're dear and precious brother and sister and friends of me and Carrie. And they live in California. Well, Tim got laid off or downsized or something. He worked in a warehouse and they've moved it to another city. So he's out of a job, or he will be really shortly. I think he already is out of the job, and he's going to have to get on unemployment. It's just gonna be tight finances for them for a while until Tim maybe finds more work. But so keep Tim and Deb in your prayers. They're precious saints. They're precious to me. You'll meet them when we get to the picnic. They're just a great couple. So pray that the finances work out for them in the months coming up while we're waiting on the Lord. And a prayer for Debbie, who is a sister in Christ who lives up in Upper Michigan, and she had a surgery done on her foot. She had a bone spur on her heel, and somehow it got tangled up in her Achilles tendon. So it's about a week ago now, I guess, she had to go in and get that bone spur removed, and they had to fix the tendon back. And she's in quite a bit of pain now and hobbling around, riding a scooter and such. So please pray for Debbie that the pain will ease up and that she'll heal well and rapidly. I think that's about all I got for prayers right now. Um, and I'll leave you with a few final words. We're stuck here for now. We don't know when the rapture is. That's just the truth of it. It could be today. It could be next year in 2024 sometime. We just don't know. And God planned it that way for us not to know for His own reasons. But we also know that God chose the moment of the rapture before the foundation of the earth. And God chose the moment of the rapture for His own reasons. He has all the knowledge that there is to have about what the best moment to have the rapture happen would be, with all of the consequences and all of the repercussions and all of the ripples that that's going to involve. Because the rapture is going to ripple through the whole universe. And especially it's going to ripple through this earth. It's going to be a completely different world as soon as we're gone. So God chose the moment He chose, and He has already chosen it. It is set in stone. It is an appointed time. I keep reminding people of that. It doesn't matter how bad the things get in this world. It doesn't matter what particular atrocities happen in this world. None of that has to do with the rapture. The rapture will happen at the time that God said it would happen, not before and not after. So what we have to do is determine in our souls and in our spirits and in our hearts that we are going to occupy as best we can until He comes. And He is coming. We can't know how close we are, but we can know we are definitely in the season of the rapture. We know that much just by looking around. But as far as to pinpoint it any further than just being the general season, nobody can do that because God set it up that way. It says nobody knows. And God says nobody knows. He means nobody knows, not even your favorite watchman. We're left to speculate about it. But we do know it's a season. We can look around and just use common sense and realize that even if there wasn't a God or a rapture or any of that that was going to happen, if you have your eyes open and your ears open, you can look around and see that this world is in collapse. The whole world is collapsing. Socially, the governments are collapsing, the economies are collapsing, the societies are collapsing. It's all collapsing. Even if there was no God and there was no prophecies or any of that, you can see that this world is coming to an end because of man's rule on it. This is all man. All the stuff that's happening, this is all man. And our genius ability to rule and govern ourselves has brought us to this point of our own destruction. So my advice to you is don't strain so hard for the rapture to be today or tomorrow. Set your mind to occupying until that moment gets here. Do everything you can do to be an ambassador for the Lord. Talk to people you're able to talk to about the Lord. Leave tracts in public places for people to find. Or pray for people. Do whatever you do as your contribution to God's kingdom. Keep doing it to the best of your ability while we wait on His perfect time. And He will give us the strength. He will give us encouragement as we need it. He will give us stronger faith because we're having to exercise our faith so much now that it is strengthening your faith whether you realize it on a day-by-day basis or not. I think we can all say, if we're objective about it, if we look back just a year ago, our faith that we have now is so much stronger than that faith we had then because we didn't have to have as much faith back then. As the days go by, it requires that we have more and more and more faith. And so our faith is growing, even if it doesn't feel like that sometimes. And that's not to say we don't have doubts, because we all do. You know, that's being human. And that's what you're going to be until you're out of this dirt suit that we're currently in and into our heavenly bodies up there with the Lord. You're going to make mistakes every day. You're going to sin every day, even if it's just a wicked thought. We all do, and we're all going to until that day when we're no longer in this world. So set your goals high for your standards of living, as far as how you want to live for the Lord. Set your standards high, but don't beat yourself up if you don't live up to your own standards. We will get through this, brothers and sisters, whether it takes another day, another week, another month, or another year. We will get through this, because that is God's will for us. His will for us right now is to keep doing what we can for the kingdom in our own little spheres of influence, and keep occupying until He comes. Keep doing what you need to do to keep body and soul together, and maintain your values and your scruples, and don't give in and don't compromise with the world. Just do what you need to do each day to keep yourself going, and to do anything you have opportunity to do for the kingdom. Do that. Be patient and wait on the Lord. That's what we're commanded to do. So let's try to be the best soldiers we can be. Hold on. I won't set a date. I won't even try to get close to it, but I don't see how it could be much longer. Of course, that don't mean nothing, but I don't know that there's all that much more that could go wrong without the whole world falling completely apart, and that's not going to happen until we're gone. So it has to be pretty close, brothers and sisters. I'm hoping by spring at the latest. I guess with that, this has been a pretty long video, but I wanted to spend some time with you because I don't know when I'll ever make another video. I don't know if I'll make another video. I don't know if we'll be here for me to make another video. I hope not. But y'all keep me and Carrie in your prayers, okay? And our family and all of those that I've asked you to pray for. And let's just do what we can, brothers and sisters, to be true to our faith, to be true to the Lord, to look to our Savior for the help and the strength that we need. And it'll be there waiting for us. Alright, my brothers and sisters. Sorry I'm not talking to you very much these days, but I have a real life that I'm having to live here too, and my own things I'm having to deal with. So until we meet again, whether it's in another video or up yonder in the clouds, I'll just say the same thing I always say. God bless you all. I love you all. And I will be seeing you all pretty soon now on that golden shore over yonder. Good night and God bless you.